Good day and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Welcome as always. Appreciate you taking a little bit of your time and spending it here with us. I'm Eoin Devereux, news and sports reporter with the Banner Press, joined this week by Ken Waddell, owner, operator, publisher, be-all and end-all of the Banner Press. Good to have you in this week, Ken.
And not retired yet.
He's not going anywhere. He will outlast us all. He will find a way.
Don't know about that.
Oh, we got a very interesting, trust me on this, even though it's going to be a lot of numbers and a lot of tax stuff, this is an interesting episode of The Story Behind the Stories. And let's get right into those numbers in just a few minutes, because we got a nice little picture and cut line on the front page about sports organizations sort of working together and helping each other out. And it's great to see the Neepawa Titans Junior A hockey team recently held their sports dinner. And as part of the sports dinner, they always look for different groups and organizations that they want to assist in some way, shape, or form with some of their fundraising efforts. And this year it's going specifically towards the NACI Tigers football team. You can see it right on the front page of the April 29th edition of the Banner Press. Head coach and general manager for the Titans, Ken Pearson, handing off a check to head coach for the football team, Chidi Small. That's going to be helping out with a couple different things there, isn't it, Ken? Since you're a part of the Titans, you can walk us through that.
Well, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it was a great evening. The sports dinner was a very nice evening. Everybody's saying great to get out again and visit and have a. It was a long night, but with the auction and everything else, they had and three speakers, well, a comedian and two speakers. But anyway, each year the team donates a portion of the proceeds from the sports dinner to a local organization. This year, it took a little different twist. We being the team, gave the Tigers a check for $750. In return, they came to the banquet. They helped set up tables and chairs. They helped take down and put everything away after. They and their management and volunteers. And they got a nice banquet out of the deal, nice meal. And they got to have their picture taken with the Sean Gauthier, of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and the Grey Cup. So being a young football team, I think it was a special event for them all around. So win-win every way. They enjoyed the banquet. We certainly appreciated the help, and we were happy to give them a check to help them with their expenses for the coming up year.
That is really fantastic, because again, I mean, when you talk about hockey and when you talk about football, those two sports really are the most expensive sports when it comes to equipment, and for young people to be able to get into that. So every little bit helps.
Yeah. No, it was great. It was just a great synergy. The committee came up with that idea, and the onside committee, and it just worked out really, really well. And it was sort of nice to see all these extra young people there at the banquet and enjoying an evening of football and hockey.
That's right. It's on the front page of this week's edition of the paper, but it's not the entirety of the front page. We got a little bit of hard news to talk about. Story every single year. I sit in and I listen to this so you don't have to. You're welcome, Neepawa. And I'm talking about tax season, and I'm talking about the financial plan, essentially the budget for the town of Neepawa. They've gone through the numbers. They had a public hearing recently to explain the numbers. A large contingent of 2 people from the public came out and saw it. So hopefully you've seen it right here on NAC TV, because they were out as well. They were filming the whole thing. So if you want to find out where your money's going, where your tax base is going to, that's the way to find out. And it was interesting to see it. And I said as well, you know how we know we're getting back to a version of normal, Ken?
Tell me, how do we get back?
Oh, funny you say that. Yes, because we're getting our taxes increased. That's how we know. For the first time since COVID-19 became a thing that we're all aware of, taxes in the town of Neepawa are on the increase. It's just a reality, unfortunately, of the world. Last year, it was a status quo budget. Essentially, you were paying the exact same as you had been the year before. The year before, actually, was a decrease of roughly about 75 cents per $100,000 of value on your property. Might not sound like much, but it's still a decrease. This year, it comes out to, and this is the way they always do it, Ken, and I never quite understood that, but why not just go with the basic $100,000? But they go with $300,000 of their assessed property value. So if you're fortunate enough to have a $300,000 home right now or land, you know exactly how much you're going to be paying in extra taxes this year. It's going to be $45.90. But again, it's just easy. Just cut it into $100,000. It's $15.30. For every $100,000 of value on your home, on your property, you're going to be paying $15.30. It's going to be slightly different for commercial retail and whatnot, but for the average homeowner, that's what it plays out to. So to be expected with so many big projects that are still on the go, isn't it, Ken?
Well, yeah, they're still finishing up the sewage lagoon project, or it's not a lagoon anymore, the sewage treatment. They're doing the water treatment plant. They're trying to do more infrastructure. The other day I counted up, and I think it's 140 housing units underway right now in Neepawa.
Yep.
And so the infrastructure services for that is significant. But you say, how do you get that figure? Well, there's several places that are 20 or 24 units each. So it only takes 4 of them to get you nearly 100.
Yeah.
And they're going up all over the place. And presumably there's the demand for the housing. There's more people coming in all the time. Mind you, there's people retiring and dying and leaving too. So this, the increase is never as big as you think it's going to be. But no, it's interesting as an old politician here. The last thing I would be trying to do, and sometimes your hand forced, but is in an election year, is raise the taxes. But you should raise the taxes in the first 2 years and hope people forget.
Yeah.
That's being cynical, but no, the taxes. When I was mayor, and I was mayor twice, I tried to encourage that we would only increase the town budget by the amount that would be raised from the increase of assessment.
Right.
And so that bites you too, because if the assessment goes up and your taxes go up, it doesn't mean your house is necessarily worth more. And if you're not going to sell it, it doesn't matter anyway. So it's a catch-22. Like, I mean, if you follow that approach to the ultimate limit, you've got problems too.
Yeah.
In some of the bigger cities, they really do have problems with that, because people may have bought a house for $150,000 20 years ago and it's worth $500,000 now, and they're paying taxes on $500,000 instead of $150,000. And if it isn't for sale, it doesn't do you any. It doesn't make you any money. So
that's right.
It's always a saw-off there.
There's always that yin-yang to the situation that we're dealing with. We are a community that is growing, that is thriving, but with that becomes a necessity for more of these types of institutions and more of these types of residents. And that's going to come with a cost in terms of more water, more sewer, and need to increase the wastewater capacity, need to increase the water capacity. But when it comes down to that, the average person just cares about how much extra am I paying. And that's what it is. It is essentially $15.30 per 100,000, just to break it down to its most basics. Other things that are part of it, though, is that there's certain things that the town distributes in forms of grants. They give out a fair amount of grant money. The largest amount that they gave out this year was $100,000 going towards the Yellowhead Center. I always emphasize this. For those of you that are unaware, Neepawa is special in this one significant way. They are one of the only communities in Western Manitoba, and perhaps potentially in Western Canada, that does not own its arena, does not own its curling club, and to a smaller degree does not own the golf course within the community. All those are volunteer run. They still do help those organizations, though. Technically, Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, technically they don't have to cut them a check at all, do they?
No, technically they don't have to do it. It's because of political pressure and reality. And I think that with the Yellowhead, and you've pointed this out too, with $100,000 this year, is only worth about $85,000. If they gave them $100,000 3 years ago, it's only worth about $85,000 now. So actually, it's a decrease.
With the rate of inflation,
yeah, it's a decrease.
Obviously, we've all noticed the rate of inflation over the last few months. If you've gone grocery shopping or if you've bought any gas for your vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that happens as well. Last year, $100,000 was given to the Yellowhead Center as well, and I believe $100,000 the year before.
I believe so, yeah. I think so. I think it was 3 years in a row now.
Yeah, but again, $100,000 right now doesn't have the same value as $100,000 2 years ago. Comes out to about 93,000 right now.
And the other thing in the future here, hopefully we'll have some comparisons, because I know you're looking at Minnedosa and we're looking at Minnedosa and Carberry and doing a comparison on the recreation funding. And it's a little complicated because Neepawa does spend more than $100,000 on recreation, obviously, because they have the pool and the park. And but there is also, the Ball Diamonds is another organization. They run them between them.
Yep.
Between the Cubs baseball team and minor ball, they kind of run that whole show.
They are correct on that. The only thing, technically, for the most part, that the town of Neepawa owns and operates is the swimming pool.
Basically, yeah.
Yep.
Park and the pool, yeah. But it's they get a heck of a deal, and you and I, we haven't come up with our figures exactly, or we have an idea what it is, but at $100,000 plus a few other smaller grants, the rest of the grants were only about, I think, $35,000 or $40,000 total, over and above that. But it's a heck of a deal compared to Carberry or Minnedosa.
$163,384.95 in terms of 2022 grant distribution. And now again, you got to factor in other things like the $360,000 they're putting aside for a recreation plan for the Neepawa pool. They're putting some of that money aside as well. So maybe you could count that towards recreation and whatnot as well.
Yeah.
But this might get me in a little bit of trouble. This is not the opinion of NACTV. This is not the opinion of the Neepawa Banner Press, and this might not be the opinion of Ken Waddell. And it might not be your opinion as well. But I'll just share this. And I'm not faulting the town of Neepawa for this. The town of Neepawa is getting away with a sweet deal right now because they don't run the Yellowhead Center, because they don't run the curling club, because they don't run the golf course like Carberry does, like Minnedosa does, like Brandon does. And I don't fault them for that. If you can get away with something like that, have at her. But it's been explained a couple times to them that the day of reckoning is going to come someday. Yellowhead Board is a volunteer board, and you can only run that marathon so many times before you get tired. One of these days, somebody's going to have the brass on the board to say, we're done, and throw the keys down on the town office's table and say, you do it. We're done. Then what's going to happen? What's going to happen then? Who knows? Maybe it'll never happen. Maybe it'll happen tomorrow. It doesn't matter. I could be dead tomorrow for all I know. I'm at the point right now, I'm just going to have fun with this right now. So,
well, I think you're right, and that keys on the table thing has been mentioned many times. In fact, it was actually mentioned fairly strongly at the very last Yellowhead meeting, middle of April. And there is a sense of frustration there because, and the town's frustrated with the Yellowhead board too, because they bring us a plan, and that's true. Nobody brings a plan. And it's very, very hard to bring forward a plan for recreation across the whole town, because it also affects the region, when there's at least 3 or 4 different recreation facilities that come to mind right off the top of our head. The Yellowhead, the Ball Diamonds, the golf course, and the curling rink are the 4 that we've talked about, and there may be others.
Yeah.
And it's very hard to bring them all together. They all have independent boards. They all have independent thought. They all have their own agenda of and they've been successful. I mean, let's face it, they've been somewhat successful. But are we as successful as we could be or should be? And I don't think we are.
No. But that's one of those things and again, this is not, don't think I'm throwing blame on the town of Neepawa. Quite honestly, I'm commending the town of Neepawa for being able to work under the circumstances they have and make it work so efficiently. Kudos to the town on this. I'm throwing a little bit of shade at these volunteer boards as well. They put in a lot of time and effort, great for you, but at the same time, somebody on that board this year should have said, hey guys, we're not getting as much as we normally do. Inflation. Nobody thinks of inflation. It's just so irritant to me that nobody factors that in when they're trying to put together budgets in this town sometimes.
Well, inflation and interest rates are something that, for a person of my age, that high interest rates were 23%. High interest rates aren't 7 or 6 or whatever, but they are high because they're certainly higher than what we were getting away with 1.5 and 2 and sometimes 0% on things. There was a time within maybe 2 years ago they were talking about negative interest. They would pay you to take the loan, and they were doing that in Europe. I mean, that's ridiculous to my mind. But anyway, no, there's a lot of factors, a lot of moving factors there. But one of the key points I've noticed over the years is with the volunteer boards, and I've served on many, chaired a few and served on many. But is that they get, like you say, they get tired. They have 12 meetings a year. Every second Tuesday night of the month. Got to go to the meeting and find out how this works and how that works, and come up with some ideas and some fundraising. And are we going to put on a social? Are we going to put on events and whatever? And the key thing is that you need all these organizations, and some of them have it. They need someone very strong in the staff position, and then the volunteers can gather around and do the shift on the gate or sell hot dogs for an hour or whatever is going on. But if you expect the board to not only do the planning, do the fundraising, do the running, they say, I'm out of here.
Yep.
I'm gone. They're too busy.
Yep. But back again towards the budget thing in terms of the town of Neepawa, no matter what they do, no matter which way they go, whether they supported the Yellowhead and the curling rink and the golf course more, or whether they didn't at all, somebody's always going to get bent out of shape. It's a thankless job. I've always said municipal politics is the most important, but the least appreciated of all three levels of government. Federal, you get all the glory, essentially. Provincial, even as well, you get a lot of glory, you get a lot of praise for things. But municipals are the ones that impact you on a daily basis. They don't get that. There's a lot of work they put in. So even though it sounds like I'm complaining about what this budget was, I still give them kudos for putting in the time and effort and making the hard decisions, because that's what has to be done in every community. So if you'd like to learn a little bit more, you can see the story. It's on page A1, continues on to page A11 of the Banner Press there. And let's go down the road a little bit, just very quickly, because the town of Minnedosa as well, they've had their budget deliberations. They've had their first reading. And they've got their own little budget things that they've got to do.
It's $2 cheaper in Minnedosa for $100,000.
That's the interesting thing. Yeah, they got a 2.2% increase on the tax levy. It's going to be about $13 per 100,000. So they're getting a tax levy increase as well. Like I said, I'm not picking on Neepawa. It's just the reality of where we are right now. And they're doing a couple different things, but they're doing them differently. The big deal, the big ticket item in the town of Minnedosa is road work, continuing to do some road improvements from the flooding that occurred a few years ago, and of course the new arena. Those are the big ticket items that seem to be playing out in Minnedosa.
I think there's great anticipation in Minnedosa about the new arena. Filling it is going to be another issue. Like filling any arena is an issue. You need really strong leadership to keep it full.
Yeah.
And that's and hopefully they've got that. But I know I see other arenas, including the Yellowhead here in Neepawa, and it's far from full.
Yeah.
Far from full.
Yeah. And again, it's one of those things of coming back here to Neepawa. People say, well, why aren't we planning for a new arena? And I'd love to have a new arena, but the fact is the will of the people doesn't demand or dictate an arena. They did a recreational survey a few years ago, and a new arena was not on the top of the list. It wasn't even in the top 3.
Yeah.
So that's each community has its own desires on what they want to pursue on that. Minnedosa has decided it's the arena. And don't get me wrong, it's going to be nice to go over there and watch a Bombers game every once in a while.
Yeah, got a new arena.
Yep. But you can find that story as well on page A2 of the Banner Press. I'm going to get through a couple of these relatively quickly because we really hammered home the budget for a little longer than we probably should have, Ken. Because we wanted to give some time to this next story. This is a story we've heard rumors about, little hearsay here and there about, but the general public didn't have a clue. In fact, apparently, Ken, even the other day when you went over to Minnedosa, there were still some people in shock, weren't there, about the sale of the Minnedosa Tribune.
Yeah. Yeah, it was on the front page of the Minnedosa Tribune, so obviously not everybody had got their paper or read their paper yet. I was talking to a few people about it. I personally think it's going to be good for the Minnedosa Tribune. It's a 139-year-old newspaper, oldest in Western Canada, and a lot of tradition there. and I think it would be a shame if it had closed. If it had joined the 21 other newspapers in Manitoba in the last 4 years that have closed. But fortunately, it's privately owned and it's going into private family ownership again. It's not a Minnedosa-based family, but it's a Shoal Lake-based family, the Nesbitt Publishing. But they are good publishers. I know them well and work side by side with them whenever we can. But I think overall it's going to be good. Quite personally, I was asked by a number of people, why didn't you buy it? And I did try to buy it a few years ago, but it just didn't work out. There was a building attached to it, and you don't need a big building anymore. And so we just let it slide by. But the key figure for me, and maybe this is getting a little too personal, but the key thing for me is that the biggest reason I didn't want to go into Minnedosa and own that newspaper. We circulate there. We cover every household, or the paper's available to every household, farm, and business in Minnedosa, the Neepawa Banner Press is. But no matter how hard we would have tried, we wouldn't be from Minnedosa. And that's going to be a bit of a battle for the Nesbitts because they're not from Minnedosa, although they're fantastic newspaper people.
Yeah.
They're going to have to work extra hard to compensate. They're not going to have an office there. They're going to have one staff person, and they're going to do a good newspaper. I know that. But it's still, people like to have that local ownership of businesses. We don't get much of that anymore because a lot of businesses are owned by people far, far away.
Yep.
But every time you lose a locally owned business, or every time there isn't local ownership on something, it causes a bit of a wrinkle of the nose type of thing with people. I didn't want to fight that battle. And so, even though I said I'm not retiring at 74 years of age, I really didn't need another newspaper either. So.
You can find out more about that story. Casper Werhan had that coverage of there. They did a tremendous job on getting the perspective and quotes from Mr. Nesbitt on the what they saw in Minnedosa that makes them think it remains a viable community. So you can find that on section A2. Casper also worked on another story. God, Casper just really outworked. Let's be honest, Casper outworked me this week. I was...
Well, she out to work that Cure gal. She's not even here. She's on holidays.
Still on holidays. Must be nice.
Yeah.
Well, I was too busy, Ken. I was way too busy answering emails all week. So,
yes.
They just start to pile up after a while.
Owen here has a huge fan base.
Well, a loud group of people who have opinions.
Yeah.
Yeah. But Casper was able to get to work on the AGM for Neepawa Gladstone Co-op. They recently held that, and it was another solid year in general for them. Their sales increased over year from 86 million to 95.5 million. Local savings, they tallied up to about 1.8 million in terms of patronage. These are positive numbers going forward. They're also doing construction right now. They're doing some builds in Gladstone and in Neepawa as well. So the viability of the co-op is strong as ever. And you really, I think, Ken, you really like to see something like that where the local co-ops are a strong, viable base.
Yeah, the co-op over the past number of years has grown tremendously. And we'll have a story actually next week on the Heritage Co-op that's based partly out of Minnedosa too. And they've grown quite a bit too. But it's a real battle because, I know Neepawa Gladstone Co-op has made no bones about it, and certainly their members have made concerns about it. They need a new grocery store in Gladstone.
Oh, yeah.
Badly. And the building is old. It's built in 3 parts. But where to put it?
Yeah.
What do you do in the meantime? You can't demolish the one and just shut the whole thing down. It's the only grocery store in Gladstone. Does it go on the highway? Does it go downtown? Does it go near where it is now? Does it go somewhere else? Mm-hmm. And that feasibility study is being worked on as we speak. And that's probably their next biggest project is to get that going.
And again, the town of Gladstone as well, Neepawa Gladstone Co-op, 2 communities equal. But sometimes Gladstone isn't it's got the little brother mentality sometimes where a lot of focus is on Neepawa. And we're guilty of that as well from time to time since we are the Neepawa Banner Press. But we do try and be a regional paper and give a community like Gladstone and the Gladstone portion of the co-op as much coverage as we can. So hopefully they will be able to move forward on something significant for the community, such as that. Now you can find that story again in this week's paper. So many different stories. We're not even going to have time to be able to go through all of them, let alone our B section, the Farmer's Advocate, our special center spread for Mother's Day. You'll find that in the paper. We do want to touch on one thing very important before we run out of time. Also came out from the town of Neepawa's most recent council meeting. In May, there will be a boil water advisory put in place. When people hear that, they sort of freak out a little bit because you hear about all these little things in communities, boil water advisory, oh no, what's wrong with the water? Please take time to read the story. An advisory and a boil water order are two separate things. This is just an advisory. They're going to be putting in some new systems, doubling our water capacity. This is a good thing for the town of Neepawa, but when they bring the water pressure down to a certain degree, they're mandated to put in an advisory as a precaution. That's what this is. A boil water order, meanwhile, is when there are contaminants, confirmed contaminants in the system. This is just an advisory. It's going to be happening in May, probably going to be happening over a 3 to 4 day period. Once we know the exact timeline, we will get that information to you. But again, I'm not on the wrong avenue here, Ken, right? People sort of freak out when they hear boil water.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a hugely controversial thing, and it's terrible when a community has to go on a boil water order. This is an advisory, and it's something to do with hooking up lines, and they have to drop the pressure to do this and that and whatever. It's pretty technical, but it's a cautionary. It's an advisory that we have to put up with that for 3 or 4 days. Well, it's just the way it is. Otherwise, they'd have to shut everything down, and then they'd have to boil water for several days if the whole lines were emptied and rechlorinate and all that kind of stuff. So
that's right. They're going to try and arrange it so that most of it happens over a weekend, so it doesn't directly affect a lot of businesses. There might be a short period of time, like about a 4 to 5 hour period, where we might have no water whatsoever on one of those days. They're going to be very clearly alerting us, keeping us in the loop on that. And just wanted to share that with you. Boil water advisory will be occurring in May, but don't stress too much about it.
Hopefully it'll go well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. As I said, we are coming near the end here. We got the Farmer's Advocate, our monthly feature. You can check that out. We got some information, some tips for successful calving season. Calving season is just sort of wrapping up right now.
Yeah. Well, actually, the winter one, there's a spring one. A lot of farmers switch to April and May calving because they don't want to be tied up with the very cold, severe weather. But
yeah.
So there's still quite a bit of calving yet to happen on some of the farms.
No. And you can find that in the B section as well. We have our special Mother's Day feature, a center spread inside the A section, and so many other stories. We barely scratched the surface. That's why you need to pick up a copy of the Banner Press. You can find it anywhere in Neepawa and surrounding communities. And if you can't, you can find it on mywestman.ca. Now, if you have any tips for us, any news, tips, or suggestions, you can contact us over at 476-3401 or at news@neepawabanner.com. We try and get out there as much as we can. There are sometimes we can't get there. There's only so many hours in the day. That's why we need your help. If there's something you think we need to share with the community, we want to hear from you. We want that sort of synergy working together to get those stories out there. We're a community newspaper and we want to serve the community. We can only do that if you're partnering with us on that. As usual, Ken, great to have you in here this week.
Haven't retired yet.
Yep. And we appreciate you. Sometimes I do get off on a little rant here and there. Where do you think I learned it from? But I appreciate you sort of sticking by and standing by. Maybe it amuses you. Maybe it's entertaining. But either way, we thank you for tuning in each and every week right here on NAC TV and right here on The Story Behind the Stories. Have a good week.